Thank you, Madam Chair. For those in the audience, we just wanted to make sure everyone is aware, a new commissioner was appointed yesterday. Commissioner will not be here, so he will not be part of the roll call. Commissioner Alvarado. Yes, sir. Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Dunn. Commissioner Guardino. Present. Commissioner Kehoe. Here. Commissioner Norton. Present. Commissioner Tavaloni. Here. Commissioner Van Konijnenburg. Chair Inman.
Here.
Senator Bell. Assemblymember Frazier. Madam Chair, we have a quorum. And just to clarify, the new commissioner has not taken his oath. That's why he's not being called in the roll. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Okay, Jim, hold on just a second. Item number 2 is our election of commission chair and vice chair.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes.
I would like to nominate as chairman of the commission, Paul Van Konijnenburg.
Okay, we will do them separately then.
I would
or
like
you're
to
gonna do
nominate
the package.
as vice chair,
Okay.
Hillary Norton.
Okay. Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, a second by Commissioner Alvarado. Do we have discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. Okay. Jim, now we're on to item 3. Welcome to the region. James.
Commissioners, thank you very much. I'm here with Henry Lee from Regional Transit this afternoon, and I want to give you a welcome or a welcome back to the greater Sacramento region. We're delighted to have you here, as we always are when you hold your meetings, and we just want to give you a bit of an overview. As you remember, our 6-county Sacramento region actually is more than just downtown and midtown that you're probably familiar with in Sacramento. In fact, we're one of the most diverse and fastest growing regions in California. We stretch from UC Davis to Lake Tahoe Rim, from Galt and Isleton all the way up to Yuba City, Marysville, and Live Oak. And we're delighted that as of November, our board just adopted our latest 20-year transportation plan and sustainable community strategy, the first out of the gate to hit a 19% greenhouse gas reduction target given us to us by the Air Resources Board. That, by the way, is the skinniest, thinnest transportation plan over 20 years we've ever adopted, but frankly, it has a lot of weight behind it because it says we can't do business as usual. And one of the things we wanted to give you an intro of today is we desperately need more people in carpools, buses, light rail. We can't do business as usual. And we want to tell you a little bit about what that looks like. I've spoken before about Civic Lab here in this region. Frankly, we have no toll roads, no toll lanes, and no toll bridges. We do not have the revenue that a lot of other parts of California has. So as Winston Churchill said, gentlemen, we're broke, now we have to think. We're trying to use creative problem solving and a startup process called Civic Lab to walk our cities and counties and transit agencies through a different and more innovative way to solve transportation challenges. And this is a schematic up here. We're partnering closely with the private sector for just $1 million in air quality funds. We leveraged another $2 million, and we put a lot of pilot projects on the street. Like this, the autonomous shuttle, many of you probably have seen or ridden on. This is the Ollie Local Motors autonomous shuttle. This ran around the Sacramento State campus for 3 months. It's running around the Rancho Cordova Business Park. And we are just simply learning and introducing this concept to people in this region, but we're also trying to figure out where can we deploy this and demonstrate this. At Davis, California, our parking lot for our Capitol Corridor, 4th busiest Amtrak line in the country, fills up at 6 in the morning. We are working with Lyft and with apps to try to figure out what do we do to get people to ride that train when the parking lot is full? How do we actually use things like Carzak, which is an app to actually do casual carpooling, a short couple of miles over to the train station, and we're hoping to bring Lyft's first Lyft line carpooling product here to this region. It is not easy in regions like ours. We may have to subsidize this, but first we're actually doing a pilot test and a demonstration. And as Henry's going to talk about a little bit, we're really excited about microtransit, door-to-door, flexible, point-to-point public transit. This is still a work in progress and an experiment, but here you see a zoomed-in map of our region. In yellow is Yolo County Transit District, YCTD. In green, we have the VIA, private provider for microtransit. And red is RT and Henry Lee's very ambitious deployment of microtransit point-to-point vehicles all over the core of our region. In Knights Landing, a very small community, rural community, a farming community, we actually have an experiment through Civic Lab where we are looking at getting kids and senior citizens to their jobs, their doctor's appointments, using transit buses and using transit workers. We have VIA in West Sacramento that I mentioned, and this to me, as I've heard the mayor of West Sacramento often say, meets the ice cream test. What's the ice cream test? It is that we have a senior citizen who can go buy ice cream for the first time at the grocery store and get home without it melting. Because before that, she never could. So this is the ice cream test. Point-to-point transportation. It is costlier, but it is more effective and reliable, and it's what our seniors and our young people and everybody is demanding. VIA is one of many experiments, and we are delighted that we're partners with Regional Transit and Henry Lee because we have one of the biggest microtransit experiments happening here in the region. Henry.
Thank you. Good afternoon again. Welcome back to Sacramento, Commissioners. I want to thank all of you and SACOG for the opportunity for me to briefly share how SACRT is rethinking transportation and providing mobility solutions that meet the needs of the citizens of the capital region. SACRT was recently highlighted by the Washington Post as one of the handful regions across the country that increased transit ridership in 2019. Year over year, SACRT has seen approximately a 6% ridership increase. In fact, when we launched our Students Ride Free program 3 months ago, we have seen 40%, 50%, 70%, that 3 months, ridership increase in the students. In the last 4 years alone, we have made a solid, rapid, and comprehensive turnaround. We reduced our fare about 10% of fare for the first time in agency's 48 years history. We formed a partnership so that all youth from K to grade 12 can ride free on our entire system. This is the first in the nation, entire system. And we increased light rail frequency and span without additional funding by improving our efficiency. And we reimagined our entire bus network to make routes more convenient and productive. And we annexed smaller transit system into our district to enhance regional collaboration by working with SACOG. And we secured funding to accelerate SACRT's light rail modernization effort, and our historical transformation was accomplished by making difficult decisions, forging regional partnerships, and ensuring financial accountability. And we promote a customer-first culture and add transit ambassadors and more security guards to improve the customer experience and provide added security presence. We installed over 1,000 live feed cameras, introduced a public announcement system in all of our 52 light rail stations, which people call it the voice of the God. When the public announcement system speaks, about 95% of the time, the people who been watched for, they change their behaviors. And our effort was recognized by the Federal Transportation Security Administration, who last year awarded SACRT the Gold Standard Award for outstanding safety and security. We also recognize that mobility is changing. People have more options and expect ease and convenience when traveling. To meet these needs, we have launched the nation's largest microtransit program. Currently, we provide service in 9 different zones or communities. Many are in disadvantaged communities. To date, we have carried nearly 200,000 individuals on our microtransit system by deploying line electric buses and 35 CNG buses. And we formed partnership with TNCs and autonomous vehicle companies to solve first and last mile solutions at suburban light rail stations. And we integrate micromobility, such as e-bikes, at our system to encourage car-free lifestyles. And we collaborated with a tech startup firm that offers incentives to those who walk, bike, and take transit and more. This is some of our e-bikes. And this is just a tip of the iceberg of what we are working on. As a result, we have won a handful of national and local awards. The list here is just a small portion of our awards, among them the Sacramento Taxpayer Association's Good Governance Award is what we are particularly proud of, because this is the first year they gave this type of awards in the last many, many years. However, we knew that if SACAT is truly going to innovate and modernize our transit system as an industry leader, we are going to need all the support from the local level to help us compete for and win state and federal funding. That is why the region is currently considering a ballot measure this November that would provide additional local support to public transit. And I want to express my gratitude to the Commission for funding our project for the Solutions for Congested Corridor last year. The project will bring much needed frequent light rail service to the eastern part of the greater Sacramento region. SACAT is excited to work with you to help our region meet the inspirational vision when it comes to economic prosperity, environmental sustainability, and equitable access to transportation for all. Again, thank you for your continued support and strong leadership.
I just want to say, as a father of a 14-year-old, I have free transit and I have microtransit that teenagers can ride, so that equals happy parents, but more importantly, the next generation of transit riders. Thanks very much for being here.
Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? No? Okay, oh, yes, Commissioner Norton.
Yes.
How much the 1,000 cameras, the Voice of God, cost? Because it's a hugely, sounds like a very successful program to keep stations safe. And
It's about $3 million.
wow.
Yeah.
The voice of God is priceless.
Congratulations. It sounds like it's been a great opportunity to increase ridership and promote safety. So congratulations.
Yes, the safety is the #1 priority, yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All righty, any other comments? Okay, we'll move on then. So item number 4 has been withdrawn. Item number 5, approval of minutes.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Van Kneinenberg, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No abstaining. That motion carries. Item number 6, Commissioner meetings for compensation.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Abstaining. That motion carries. Susan, I'm going to skip you, and we're going to go to item number 8, because I think we might flow a little better. So with that, we'll go to Commissioner reports, and I'm going to jump in first this time instead of being polite and going last. And as you all know, Miss Susan has decided to retire. And so, wow, this is hard for all of us. Susan has been a rock, a giant, a quiet giant, a good friend, a mentor, and we're going to miss you. And so it's bittersweet. We're excited for you and your new chapters, but we're also sad to lose you. You have made such wonderful contributions. You have worked so hard. And what to say? I don't know what else to say. But we do have a proclamation. Do you want me to read it to you, girlfriend? Okay, it's got a lot of whereases. You all would just know that we love Susan Branson, and the state of California is so much better off because she chose to spend her career here. So, wow, this is hard for me, and I'm not usually short on words, but anyway. Okay, and now I want to call on Assembly Trans Chair Jim Frazier, because I think he might want to say something.
So,
We
Susan,
probably need to use the mic, Jim, just for the recording.
okay, go ahead. Susan, I've had the opportunity to serve with you since you've were appointed the chair, or the director of the CTC. And one of the things I admired so much is your willingness to listen to everybody involved, even in the public. And you're such a value of all of the opinions and all of the things that were brought front to you, vetted them in a professional manner, and made everybody feel like they mattered. And also the component of the implementation of SB 1. You were so worried about the deprogramming of the STIP. You came over to my office and said, what are we gonna do? I said, we're gonna do SB 1. SB 1 was passed, the repeal was upheld, and you started the framework for the implementation of making sure that the roads and highways in California were maintained. With that, from the California State Assembly and Speaker of our House, I want to present this resolution to you, knowing that you will be missed and we will be using you for guidance as times go by. But I love you, and I can't thank, this is going to be hard, because you've been my rock. Thank you very much. Yeah, right. Hide my tummy. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so anybody else? Commissioner Alvarado?
To keep it short, I just wish you a very, very long and healthy retirement. And we truly are going to miss you. And just when times get tough, sometimes you can just make things change with a smile. It's a very special quality. So thank you for everything you've done for me and for the commission.
Commissioner Dunn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a saying, a Latin phrase called multum in parvo, and it means a lot in a little package. And isn't that the perfect definition of Susan Branson? Is when she first took this job, I kind of laughed because I said, how is anyone going to do it with that voice, right? And that voice was so powerful in just its quiet knowledge and position and listening as well to come to compromise that I just learned so much watching her in action, be the powerhouse of a lot in a little package. So I just want, from my perspective, how much I learned working with you, how open you were to all the changes that are happening every day in mobility. And I thank you for your leadership. And I'm still calling you at 8:30 in the morning on Mondays. So thank you, Susan, for everything on behalf of us all.
Okay. Yes, I'll just work my way down the line here if I can. Commissioner Burke?
This button, okay. Well, Susan, you probably have faced the most difficult term of anyone that has sat in that chair. I mean, you went through some tough times, difficult times. SB1 was challenging, and often you probably didn't know whether or not there was going to be money for the budget. I remember when we were crossing off items, and no one was happy. But they're happy now. They're happy because you worked hard, and you were probably uniquely situated where you could, with your knowledge, your background, you could get the message over. And I want to tell you how much I appreciate the fact that you speak to each one of us, you make sure that every one of us is heard, and just the best for your future. I envy whoever or wherever you decide that you're going to contribute. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke. Commissioner Kehoe, did you?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Susan, I just want to add my voice to the chorus. I didn't know you when you came on. I was brand new to the commission, and people thought very highly of you. And I remember Lucy saying about your interview, you knocked it out of the park, and we all felt better. At least I know I did. And that was just the start. As Yvonne said, you have really led us through some extremely controversial, contentious, and important issues. These were not little fights. These are big fights. And your leadership is understated, but so effective. And I just want to thank you.
Commissioner Gardino.
The red button.
It's the screen.
My tech support is Chairman Jim Frazier. Thank you, Jim.
Said the head of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group.
That's where all of Silicon Valley goes for tech support, is Chairman Jim Frazier. Susan,
There's only one guy lower than you.
you're the backup. Susan, I think the best leaders listen, learn, and then lead. And you have done that in such a remarkably effective way of listening to all perspectives, learning everything you can, and then leading with integrity and ethics. The way you live your life personally and professionally is a role model to every one of us in this room. We're going to deeply miss you, and we wish you the best in this new chapter of your family life and all that you contribute to our community and to our state. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Van Kynenberg.
I will try to not take it as a personal slight that you're retiring right after I was named chair.
I know.
I think one of the things that all of us have served on boards and commissions, and what Susan, you did better than anyone I've ever seen is you looked out for your commissioners. You made sure your commissioners were well informed and had all the tools necessary to make a decision. But then I think there was a selflessness in that came from being a mom that you brought to the commission. And so, and I know you're going to have more time to be a mom and be a wife and spend more time with the people you really love. And that just doesn't surprise any of us, given how much you loved and cared for all of us. And she was always making sure that we had everything we need when we traveled and made sure that we weren't on unsafe planes and things like that. So, right, you were always thinking of us on those.
Always checking the planes.
Always checking the flights. So thank you, and we wish you well.
Thank you
And
so
we wish you all the best for your family.
Thank you. Okay, so now, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Commissioner Norton.
I just wanted to say, even in my short time here, Susan, that you are one of the classiest women. And the fact that you could be in a lot of firefights and continue to have a smile on your face, to keep everybody informed, and to really move through situations with just aplomb. It's something that I think everyone should really study as they are part of this bureaucracy as to how to be an honest broker, but someone who is always kind, who is always classy, and who is always careful about what you say and how you make everyone feel heard. So thank you very much. We will miss you.
Yes, Commissioner Tavoloni.
Well, you've all heard all the praises for this young lady. Let me really tell you about the real Susan Branson. You know, if she didn't have me, her life would have been so easy. Half of her life was, where's Joe? Or she'd be on the phone saying, Joe, now do you understand that you're supposed to be here at a certain time, and when you come down from the room, I'll be standing here, I'll have the door open, so if you see me, that's where you're supposed to be. Well, that worked out real well until a few times when I said, well, hell, I can do this on my own. And I was in 10 different places, and people were waiting, and Susan was saying the same thing. Where's Joe? Well, Joe got lost, or Joe wasn't listening. And I can only say that, you know, every once in a while I'd get a call and Susan would say, my flight comes in at 10:30. I'll be at your office at 11:15, and we'll go on down to San Diego. Hell, that's great, right? So you got a ride, you got somebody that's going to drive you down. Every time I would check the watch to make sure that she was on time, and my secretary said, you can set your clock on what Susan says. So Susan, I just want you to do one thing for me. If you would kind of just tell Mitch a little bit how you kind of handled me and controlled me. Mitch, I wish you a lot of luck. But I can't thank you enough for everything that you've done for me and helped me through all the commission meetings and telling me where to be, how to get there. No, you don't go. I'll be there and I'll walk you over or something. Mitch, I'm just telling you what I'm telling you because I hope you're listening, because I need a hell of a lot of help. So,
Hold on.
yeah, right. And so I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You've been a sweetheart to the commission. You've been someone that has worked around the clock, not 8 hours a day. But I know I would get calls from you at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. Where are you, Susan? I'm just leaving. So I want and hope that you look at those two girls and your husband and say, I'm yours now. I wish you all the luck in the world from here on. And I just want you to know that anytime you need any help or need anything, you've got 11 people or 111 people that will jump for whatever you may need. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go now to the other work that the commission has been doing, and Papa Joe kind of got a little ahead there, but we had an executive search committee. And Vice Chair Von Kneidenberg did an absolutely amazing job of a professional beyond professionals in terms of how we should do a search for this very important role. So with that, Paul, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for your leadership, and would you like to give a little summary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So since December, the beginning of December, the commission has gone through a search for a new executive director. And through that search, we're pleased to announce that Mitch Weiss has accepted the position of executive director of the California Transportation Commission. Effective Friday, January 31st, he will be the executive director.
All right. Yeah, welcome, Mitch, and we're good. Okay, just on this heading, are there any commissioner reports that you would normally be reporting on your activities?
I
Yes.
just want to briefly thank the County of San Luis Obispo, who hosted Chair Inman and myself, as well as members of our staff. And thank you for giving us a warm reception, and thank you for Caltrans District 5 for showing us the issues that are going on in that area. And then I also want to thank Merced County, who hosted me recently and looked at projects that are important to Merced County. So thank you for your hospitality.
Yes, Commissioner Kehoe.
And I'm thinking the Undersecretary is going to brief you more fully on this, but I want to express my thanks to Secretary Kim for visiting San Diego twice in the last 5 weeks or so to look at the situation along the rail line at the Del Mar Bluffs. Very critical situation. We've talked about it here, and Caltrans and the agency have been super supportive, but we really appreciate his attention and the attention of the department and the agency staff, as well as San Diego and the local communities. So I just wanted to let the commissioners know that conversation has started.
Thank you. Commissioner Gardino.
Thank you. This is more of just fun, as some of you on the dais and on our staff and participants know. Our foundation puts on a number of community charity races. Our latest was our annual Santa Run Silicon Valley, with our theme of the gingerbread man and the message, "You can't catch me." And I want to present this, of course, to Susan so that you can sweat in style. Have these for all of our staff and my commissioner colleagues as well.
Thank you. Any other commissioner reports? I just want to add special thanks to San Luis Obispo. We arrived there just after the I-5 closure, so the message loud and clear we got was the need to really be cognizant of our resiliency planning. And Tokes, we wish you could have been with us that day, because I-5 had been closed for about 5 days, and that really does become a lifeline for us. So I think note for all of us is to really look at what happens in our communities when we do have those closures, which we unfortunately seem to have on a regular basis. So with that, also I attended TRB again this year. We actually had 2 of our CTC staffers, and Director Ramashakan and I compared notes there. And we're on a mission really to take that big body of work that gets done and make sure that we're taking advantage of that in our state. And so for all of you, if you too participate and want to help us with that endeavor, my position has been that often we go there, we hear about great work, and then we get back and we get busy and we're putting out whatever fires we put out. And so I think for all of us, the CTC, and look forward to working with Tokes on this in terms of just seeing how best to, whether, I think Tokes spoke on the safety issue, which I know is one of his priorities. So I think it's important for all of us to see what else we can learn. We like to think we have all the corner on great ideas, but we really might be able to pick something up here and there along the way. So with that, that ends my report. So now, Susan, we'll go back and do item number 7.
Okay. Commissioners, I have a report, but before I do that, I need to just address you all. And today's the day where I need to stay strong. Because this is it's actually a very happy time I will spend with my family and friends when I retire, but you are all my family. You all are. And you are all my friends. And so with that, I'm very happy to be retiring. But I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the support, the faith, the trust that you have had in me, in my role. You are all the happy thoughts I have, and there's a reception tonight, so, I really wish I could roast you all, because that makes me feel happy. Because we've had so much, we've worked on very hard things, all of us in the commission. We've experienced a lot together, and to Assemblymember Frazier, and Senator Bell, who's not here, the two of you, as the chairs of the committees, are amazing. We had the shortfall in Senate Bill 1 funding, not Senate Bill 1 funding, we had the shortfall prior, and that was terrible. And we got through it as a transportation community, and I got through it in my role with the support of each and every commissioner sitting here, and our amazing staff that is so dedicated, so professional, so talented, and all of you. We got through it. And then Assemblymember Frazier and Senator Bell, who's not here, you did the heavy lifting to pass the most landmark transportation funding package in the state of California ever, but possibly the nation. And that I don't have the statistics, which I would like to, but I'm guessing it is. Accountability measures. And sitting in Eric Thronson's office, when he was in our office, and Lori Waters was sitting there, and we're watching the vote, and then all of a sudden, it passed. And I did not want to let you and Senator Bell down, or the commission down, or all of our partners who had tremendous need throughout California. All the people in the state. And I thought, why didn't I start working on this 6 months ago? But you know what? We got through it all because I work for the most amazing people in the world. I have so much respect for all of you, and you have had trust in me, and I'm so thankful. And I'm so thankful to the staff who, no matter what challenge they're faced with, they're not to worry, Susan. We got this, and they do. And it's also all of you out there. So I just want to tell you what an honor it has been to work here and to serve the people in the state, but mostly to work for just this amazing group of people who I have so much respect for. And I want to congratulate Mitch Weiss on his appointment. And I know that the commission is in good hands, and the staff is in good hands, and our partners. And I'm confident that my departure will not affect the commission's activities in its role. I just wanted to just make sure that I've communicated to you all how much you mean to me. I know you won't all be at the reception tonight, but I just am grateful to everyone here, everyone on webcast, but most importantly, to you all individually, commissioners, and our wonderful, wonderful staff, Assemblymember Frazier and Senator Bell, and I'm just so grateful. So thank you. And that was my my remarks on that. tell you individually. And then I do have a report. So I want to start by congratulating Commissioner Kehoe on her appointment to the commission by the Senate. And then it wasn't announced earlier, I just wanted to also congratulate a newly appointed Commissioner Joseph Liu. He was appointed yesterday by the Speaker of the Assembly. And he will not be at the meeting this week, but he is looking forward to working with you all. I also wanted to take a moment to thank Director Omashakin and Chief Deputy Director at Caltrans, Jim Davis. I'm not sure if he's here. There you are. I wanted to just express my gratitude to you for providing contiguous office space for the commission staff. I am so gratefully appreciative, and I know on behalf of the commissioners, we are, and our staff, so thank you so much. Yes, it is. Thank you. And then I have some personnel matters, but before I get to that, I did have an action item on my report. Commissioners, I would request your approval to remove the shop hearings on the adopted calendar and delegate to the newly appointed, to-be appointed executive director the ability to add those shop hearings once we know that the timing is right and the appropriate level of comments have been made to the draft shop. So, thank you.
Okay, we had a motion by Commissioner von Konynenberg, a second by Commissioner Kehoe, I heard first. Was there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstaining? That motion carries. So everybody note to calendar, those hearings will not start next week, so don't show up and think that we didn't show. So we're going to reschedule those and stay tuned.
Okay. And then Commissioners, there's a few personnel updates I want to give you. Very happy to announce that John Prey, John, why don't you stand up? You all know John. He's been working as an engineer in our office. We recently promoted him to an assistant engineer in our office, and congratulations, John. Also, we have hired Brandy Fleming as the Associate Government Program Analyst. There's Brandy. Brandy will be assisting in our procurement, personnel, and other matters in addition to assisting Doug. Brandy, could you stand up so everyone can meet you? Hi, Brandy. And then pleased to announce that we've also hired Julia Kingsley. Julia, would you stand? You will hear from Julia. She has been hired to serve as an Assistant Deputy Director for Legislation. Want to let you know that she came from Assemblymember Laura Friedman's office. She staffed bills, all were signed into law, that focused on speed limits, the California Transportation Plan, accessory dwelling units, CEQA, firearm safety, and more. She has a degree from Occidental College in Urban and Environmental Policy, and she completed the Crow Fellowship in Public Affairs in Los Angeles. We're grateful that you joined our team. Thank you, Julia. And lastly, on the personnel front, I have no idea if Clark Paulson is here. Is Clark here? Clark, you got to stand up. Clark is retiring after 34 years of state service.
Oh, wow.
Clark, like me, is an accountant. He was started as an auditor, I believe, at the Auditor General's office. Clark and I go way, way back to the early days, and he was instrumental in delivering the Fast Track program that's now used on all of our toll roads. He was a recipient of Emerson Reiner Management Award. He is a CPA, and I'm just really happy for Clark. Clark actually has a daughter that was friends with my daughter, and so congratulations, Clark. And Commissioners, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any questions for Susan? Thank you. Thank you. And congratulations, clerk's retirement as well. Okay, we're going to move on now to the Secretary of Transportation. My agenda says David Kim, but I think it's Alyssa, so we're going to go with Alyssa. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I am here on behalf of Secretary Kim. He sends his regrets for not being able to attend today. I wanted to briefly update the Commission on several items that we've been working on, and then Susan, you're not off the hook yet. I'll come back around to you. So I wanted to start off with Governor Newsom's budget that was released on January 10th. Give you some highlights of that. The budget includes $27 billion for CalSTA and its departments to continue significant investments in the state's transportation infrastructure and department operations. Of particular significance, the budget includes $5.4 billion in voter-approved SB1 Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017 funding, including $3.5 billion for existing investments in road repair, rehab, and maintenance, and $1.9 billion for local transit and rail, trade corridor enhancements, congestion relief, active transportation, and other projects. The budget also includes what we're calling the climate budget, which provides $1.4 billion in continuing funding from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund for transit, rail, and transit-oriented development projects, including high-speed rail, $400 million in GGRF direct grants to accelerate the transition to clean vehicle fleets, and a new Climate Catalyst Revolving Loan Fund, which will help jumpstart new investment in low-carbon transportation technology and infrastructure, like electric and hydrogen vehicles, as well as charging infrastructure for light and heavy-duty zero-emission vehicles. It is important to note that these GGRF investments are in addition to the billions of dollars committed to existing transportation infrastructure funding programs funded by the gas tax and SB1. In fact, CalSTA is putting GGRF and SB1 funding to work right now through the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, with about $400 to $500 million in new capacity that will be available over the next 5 years. We've recently received 45 applications from around the state requesting $2.4 billion in funding. More details on the specific applications will be released very soon, and the grant evaluation process is underway. We expect to announce the awards on April 1st. The governor also announced more than $1 billion in homeless response funding in his proposed budget. Homelessness is a complex problem, and core strategies primarily involved housing, social services, and public health programs. But transportation will play its part too. CalSTA and Caltrans are included in the governor's recent executive order on homelessness and will assist with implementation of the EM. Turning to the next item, I wanted to mention that on Monday, Caltrans posted the draft 2020 State Highway Operation and Protection Program. Now I know why we call it the SHOP. Better acronym there. Caltrans' primary funding program for rehab, replacement, and operational improvement of the state highway system. I know that Caltrans will be briefing the commission on the delayed circulation of the draft 2020 SHOP today. At the outset, I just would simply state that some of what we're working on now is through a relatively new administration, we have new expectations. And the SHOP represents an investment of almost 900 projects valued at almost $20 billion, significant investment. And it is CalSTA's expectation that investments such as this clearly convey the state's priorities that include preserving and protecting the state highway system, improving roadway safety, improving travel options and access, improving public health and quality of life, and lowering greenhouse gas emissions. Going forward, the Secretary and I will work closely with Caltrans to effectively communicate the state's priorities in the department's major plans and programs and in a timely manner. Turning to the SAFE rule, I would like to give the Commission a brief update on the state's actions to address the Trump administration's Safe Vehicles Rule Part 1, which became effective last November. As the Commission is aware, the Safe Rule Part 1 could potentially harm transportation project delivery in California. Moreover, until Safe Rule Part 2 is finalized this year, we won't know the full impact of these rules. CalSTA, Caltrans, and CARB have worked with stakeholder groups to develop a frequently asked questions document that provides a more detailed explanation of the points that I will mention. We shared the FAQ with our partners last week and posted it on Caltrans' website. The SAFE rule undermines CARB modeling assumptions that transportation agencies in non-attainment areas use to demonstrate that their transportation plans, programs, and certain projects conform with the Clean Air Act. So last November, CARB released off-model adjustment factors to its MFAC models to allow transportation plans, programs, and projects to demonstrate conformity and move forward. These adjustment factors may be revised once SAFE Rule Part 2 is finalized. To date, CARB has provided the U.S. EPA with all requested information regarding its adjustment factors. EPA must now work with our partners at the Federal Highway Administration and the FTA regarding the use of CARB's MFAC adjustment factors for transportation conformity determinations. So I want to be clear on this point. The ball is now in EPA's court. In the meantime, transportation plans, programs, and certain projects can be delayed if California agencies cannot attain federal Clean Air Act conformity determinations. So to recap for the Commission, just a few proactive steps at CalSTA, Caltrans, and CARB that we've taken over the past several months to mitigate the adverse impacts of the SAFE Rule. Caltrans coordinated with 3 large MPOs, SLOCOG, SACOG, and SANDAG, to expedite their RTP adoption and achieve federal Clean Air Act conformity determinations prior to the SAFE Rule effective date. Additionally, 27 FTIP and FSTIP amendments that required conformity determinations were completed prior to the SAFE Rule effective date. If we had not taken these proactive and time-sensitive steps, some of the biggest regions in the state would have immediately faced restrictions in the transportation projects they could advance. We are also evaluating state-level actions that can be taken to mitigate the adverse impact of the SAFE Rule. But we also must set clear expectations. The state cannot unilaterally resolve some of the most serious adverse impacts of the SAFE Rule if we cannot get timely federal cooperation on air quality conformity determinations. So more to come on this topic for sure. I also wanted to mention and follow up on Commissioner Kehoe's remarks about the work group we have established, the Los-San Diego Regional Rail Corridor Working Group. We'll have to come up with an acronym for that one. I'll work on that. At the last commission meeting, Commissioner Kehoe raised the topic of Del Mar Bluffs, which had experienced failures due to storm events days earlier. As the Commission is aware, the Los-San Rail Corridor is the nation's second busiest intercity rail corridor, which supports significant freight and commuter rail operations and is part of the U.S. Strategic Rail Corridor Network. As the corridor runs through the city of Del Mar, climate change-induced sea level rise is eroding the bluffs and threatening the stability and viability of the route. Since the last Commission meeting, Secretary Kim visited the Del Mar Bluffs and inspected the site of the recent storm damage. And earlier this month, he convened the Los-San Diego Regional Rail Corridor Working Group to address near and long-term strategies to stabilize the Del Mar Bluffs. The working group brings together regional partners on this major climate resilience project. The Secretary has challenged the group to examine funding programs for the near-term stabilization of the Del Mar Bluffs. The working group will also serve as a forum for discussing locally driven long-term solutions. We look forward to working with the Commission and regional partners to identify the best transportation funding programs for the near-term stabilization of this nationally significant rail corridor. And as I conclude, I wanted to make a couple of recognitions. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank Tamika Butler for stepping up and serving on the CTC. Tamika submitted her resignation this month, and we are sorry to see her go. She brought a much-needed perspective and expertise to the Commission on equity and sustainability and how to invest better in active transportation. We hope to find someone with equal passion as Tamika for inclusive, greener, and safer active modes of transportation. And finally, I want to express our profound gratitude to Susan Branson for over 30 years of service to the Commission and Caltrans. As the Commission's Executive Director since 2016, she has had a major role in the programming and allocation of billions and billions of dollars for the construction of transportation improvements throughout California. She led the Commission through a pivotal time as the state implemented SB1 and the public demanded transparency and accountability for this landmark investment. I wish Susan all of the best as she embarks on her new opportunities and challenges. Thank you.
Do we have questions, comments? Hearing none, we will move on. Excuse me. Okay, we'll go to Vemp. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I skipped over Tokes. Director Ramashakin. You're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You skipped over me in the workshop meeting yesterday as well. Are we developing a pattern here?
Oh, man, went right to my heartstrings. I'm so sorry.
No. A very, very good afternoon, commissioners, members, community members in the audience. I want to echo a lot of the sentiment that's been shared already, that the Undersecretary just shared about Susan before I give my report. It's only been 3 months for me, but in that short span of 3 months, I've had a chance to work with Susan, and her leadership and her partnership is something that I know Caltrans and myself personally will miss, especially as I enter into these new responsibilities. Excited for you and what comes next for you and your family, and wish you a glorious retirement. Thank you for the short 3 months for me and the partnership that you've guided me on. Thank you very much. So just like Director Branson, Susan Branson said, for the CTC, there are very similar changes happening at Caltrans. It's an exciting time and a challenging time at the same time. From a challenging standpoint, one of the things that we're going through is we're losing a lot of tenured staff, a lot of tenured leadership. But it's also an exciting period for us because we get a chance to bring in new leaders, new minds who can help us move the organization forward. So my first point to really focus on here is some of the changes that we're having in the department from a personnel standpoint. And there are a lot of leadership changes that are happening. Number one, for the first time in the history of the department, we have hired a chief safety officer. Last week, I appointed Rachel Carpenter, who has been with the department since 2016. She's been in charge of Caltrans's pedestrian and bicycle safety branch for the last 4 years, and she's been working with CalSTA, the agency, on the Zero Traffic Fatalities Task Force. Excited to have her step into this role for the first time in the department's history. This is a critical responsibility for us. I've had multiple conversations with members of the commission and our Assembly Chairman Frazier about how important safety is. This is a focal point for us. We lose nearly 3,600 people every single year on our highway, on our transportation system. We have to have a bigger focus on this, and she will guide us and help us along the way in that effort. And I want to give credit to, by the way, one of my predecessors for actually coming up with the idea of creating a chief safety officer position, Director Lori Berman, after seeing some major incidents on our system, had a conference and created this position post that conference. Number two, I'd like to announce also the appointment of Mike Keever as our new chief engineer and deputy director for project delivery. Is Mike here? Mike, if you don't mind standing. Mike has been with Caltrans for more than 30 years. You're very familiar with him. He's been at the podium multiple times to speak to the commission on issues going on at Caltrans. He's been the chief of the Division of Project Management for a long time, and in this new responsibility, he will be managing over 3,000 projects that are in the pipeline, more than $10 billion worth of projects, and an additional $5 billion that will be infused into the pipeline with the work that we're doing on SB1. So congratulations to Mike. Thanks for being here. Number three, the third recent appointment is the appointment of Jeannie Ward Waller as Deputy Director of Planning and Modal Programs. For the last 5 or 6 months, she's been Acting Director of District 2. Prior to that, she was the Sustainabilities Program Manager for Caltrans. She's got a great background in planning and engineering. Excited about her taking over the planning efforts, the modal efforts, the research and innovation efforts that Caltrans will be undertaking in the months and years to come. Some of the retirements, one in particular that's been mentioned already, I'll just jump to him real quickly, is our Clark Paulson, our Division Chief for Budgets. He'll be retiring this Friday. I was in a meeting with Clark yesterday. He's just an impressive guy with the knowledge that he brings to financial and budget issues as it relates to transportation and Caltrans. I want to thank Clark for his service, wishing you the best in retirement. Steve Takegawa is our current Deputy Director for Maintenance and Operations. He'll be retiring at the end of March. Steve's been a great deal of help to Caltrans and me since my appointment. He's got a tremendous responsibility with dealing with maintenance issues across the state, and he's also guiding and helping us through a lot of the homeless, unsheltered issues that we're facing today. Chris Rojas, the Deputy Director for Administration, has also stepped away from the department. She has taken on new responsibilities at the Public Utilities Commission. For the last several months, she's been working on assignment at CalSTA agency, and she's moved on from the CalSTA team to work at the Public Utilities Commission. And finally, Gene Schreier, our Deputy Director of Legal Affairs and our Chief Counsel, is retiring this Friday. This week is our last week. I don't think Gene is here, possibly. Gene's not here. But she's retiring from Caltrans. She's been in that job for nearly 5 years in guiding the department on legal issues. She'll be dearly missed as well. So a lot of changes within the department, challenging that we're losing a lot of institutional knowledge, but we are having new leaders step up to help us run the department. 3 other quick points to touch on. I think Undersecretary Canove mentioned this already, but the governor during the first week of March released an executive order on the homelessness and housing crisis that we're facing. 3 key things to point out that we will be focused on from that executive order from Caltrans' standpoint. One, the governor in the executive order asked the department to come up with accountability metrics to assess the use of state resources to reduce the homelessness crisis we're facing. So that's going to be one of the first things that we take on. And also ready-to-use lease templates. We have been working on lease templates with several cities across the state already. 4 cities already have lease templates that we've been able to set up in the past: Oakland, San Francisco, San Jose, and Los Angeles. We already have lease agreements with them, and now we're working on sort of ready-to-use lease templates for any additional cities across the state. There are more than 200 cities that have declared that they have a shelter crisis as it relates to this homelessness issue, and so we'll be targeting and focusing on those cities first, but also working with all more than 600 cities across the state on lease agreements to address this issue. And third, on the homelessness crisis, as you have seen and heard already, Caltrans, in partnership with DGS, Department of General Services, stepped up to the governor's request to have trailers delivered to cities that were ready for trailers. Oakland was the first city to say they were in need, and Caltrans worked with DGS to deliver 15 trailers to the city of Oakland to help with the homelessness crisis that exists there. And the city of LA is next. The governor has access to deliver 30 trailers to Los Angeles, and we're working on that as we speak. We're prepared to help get those trailers to Los Angeles. Like Undersecretary Canove mentioned, this is not just a problem of establishing or creating infrastructure for this issue, at least temporary infrastructure. This is a long-term issue. And the governor has clearly said we need to focus on not only the infrastructure component, but the social and public health component of this challenge as well. Two more issues very quickly. You will hear from our staff on the shop. That has been mentioned already. The shop is a little late in its delivery. We were supposed to get it out to the public in December, but one of the reasons why it's slightly been delayed is the fact that for the first time in the shop's history, this shop plan will be focused on sort of a needs-based approach, an assets management-based approach that was identified in SB1. And so this shop is very much connected to the requirements of SB1, and we had to do additional analysis over the last several weeks to make sure that this shop included those requirements from SB1. And another key point about why it was a little behind in its delivery is the fact that we wanted to ensure that complete streets and active transportation components that we've been talking about especially the last legislative session, we talked about quite a bit, were also addressed in the shop, and we did a thorough review of that to see how we can make those additions to the shop. And finally, I'll touch on the Inspector General audits that have come out recently in the last few weeks and months. I will very pointedly say that the department takes the audits very, very seriously. One of the steps that we will be taking in the coming months is we'll be looking to see how we can get additional resources within the department to pay more attention to audit issues and sort of a more risk-based approach to looking at audits that we may have. We'll be monitoring the challenges that we have in this area a lot more closely. And part of that challenge for us is having the resources dedicated to it. And we will be doing that. You will be hearing from our Chief Deputy Director, Jim Davis, on this very issue a little later in the agenda. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Kehoe, yes.
Director, thanks for the report, very, very thorough. And I know there's some issues important issues you're touching on. To go back to your Caltrans response to the homeless crisis just for a second.
Yes.
A few months ago, we heard some numbers on the amount of money it takes the department to clear sites in the right-of-way of freeways and state routes where homeless encampments are proliferating, I guess we'd say. You know, I'd like an update on that at some point, and not only the budget impacts, but kind of the numbers of Californians you're dealing with in those situations that are being moved out and what happens to them and things like that?
We will definitely do that, Commissioner. You know, this is one of the issues, probably one of the biggest crises that the state is facing at the moment. You know, this is not a core responsibility of the departments, but we've absolutely had to step up and be a team player as we look to tackle this challenge. I think the numbers are we spend roughly more than $15 million a year on this particular issue, and we know we're a landlord, if you will. There are people that are living on our property, whether we think it's appropriate or not. And so we're going to be the team player that we should be and continue to do our part to address this issue. And we will work on a report at the commission. Is that what you're requesting?
If I could ask for us to accept that or whatever the formalities are, I'd like a little more information.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioners, Commission staff will work with Director Omashak and his staff and agendize an update on this at the next meeting.
Thank you. And I want to acknowledge, I know it is not your core responsibilities, but like all of us, we're confronting this situation. I'm glad your team is responding. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Director Omashak, and if I could just add to that, I've mentioned before, at the fear of dating myself, I have opined for the good old days when no one could litter. We had the Lady Bird Johnson, and we did not throw the candy wrapper out the window of the car because our dad would get a very expensive citation. And we all knew that. And it seems like we have regressed as a society and throwing trash. And it just breaks my heart when I drive around our roads and see just the amount of litter that's out there. So when you're looking at all of this, can you help me understand if we need to get our buddy, Assembly Trans Chair Frazier over there, do we need a new campaign? Is it an enforcement? Is it a public service? What is it? Because we can all do our part. And granted, the homelessness issue creates a different kind of litter, but there is an awful lot of litter that goes on all of our roads and everything, and it's just, we've forgotten where the trash receptacles are or something. So could you put that on your little list? It's not gonna be the key solution set, but I think if all together where it's not cool to throw your trash on our roads will help our team collectively who are charged with cleaning up trash.
Yeah, I agree with you, Madam Chair. But I think we know clearly that this issue is connected to the unsheltered homeless crisis as well.
Yeah, it is.
It's not just people in vehicles that are tossing out items.
No,
They're
not at
part-
all. I
part of
didn't
the-
want to imply
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But it's
yeah.
just generally speaking, there's an awful lot of just
There is.
trash that, yeah.
There is, and I think it'll be a good opportunity for us to address that issue in conjunction with what Commissioner Kehoe has requested, that meeting. Whenever we have that, I think that those items are connected. And the Undersecretary was just reminding me or informing me that we have a budget request to actually increase our litter budget as well because of how much of a challenge that it is for us to tackle. So we'll connect those two items, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it'd be great.
The unsheltered homeless crisis and the litter crisis. We'll combine those two items.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Chair Frazier.
In response to your request, Madam Chair, we have been looking at the response to the deterrent to littering also. The Highway Patrol is down 1,000 officers in the state of California. And so you look at enforcement as being almost nil when you look at priorities. And as the highway fatality rate has risen also, we've introduced legislation to increase the Highway Patrol by 120 officers a year for 4 years going forward, and looking forward to the administration's help with that. But that's one of the things is people don't have the deterrent anymore also.
Okay, okay. All righty. Anything else for Director Amashaka? Okay, we're good. Now we'll move on to Vince Mamano and Federal Highways.
Quitter, quitter, quitter. Don't worry, I'm not quitting, everybody. I'm sorry, retiring. We'll call it retiring. Congratulations, Susan, on that. That's incredible. I had an opportunity I asked Susan if she'd come over and talk to a leadership group that Federal Highway has, a national group. And Susan was kind enough to come over and talk. And it's really kind of fun because all the stuff you talked about that you saw in her is the stuff she talks about when she talks about leadership and when she talks about things she's learned from other people and just gleaned as, you know, she's a sponge on trying to just seeing what people are doing and just learning. She did a lot of quotes and talked about things that people taught her. I think she will very begrudgingly, I don't think she would take any credit for anything she taught anyone else. But you've taught a lot of people a lot of things, and I appreciated you coming over and showing what we've seen and had an opportunity for Federal Highway leadership to see what leadership looked like. So thank you for that, and the relationship that we've had. Mitch, I mean, I'll see you at the Cool Haircut Club later, so we'll talk about that later. So I'm glad that worked out. So Federal Highway, we have $3.6 billion. That's for our obligation limitation. We're 15 million more than Texas again, so we're still ahead of Texas. There is a notice of funding opportunity for infra, the infra program. That's will be. Those applications are due on February 25th. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of people that have gotten infra grants. You should be talking to them. It's very important to look at the application process, make sure you're filling it out, everything they're asking for. So there's a lot of information on the Federal Highway websites for that. Thank you, Alyssa, for covering the safe rule for us so that I didn't have to cover the safe rule for us. So we're working, our headquarters, Federal Highway headquarters is working with EPA to try and come to the resolution on how we work with the next step. Safety Summit. So Tokes had a safety summit. He spoke about that with Lori Berman, had that last year, the end of last year. So this is their second safety summit. Congratulations on that. I think it's there's been a lot of changes. I don't think a lot of people see things that happen because people get together. There's space on the roadway for the contractors when they're working. So giving them a little bit more space to work, giving some windows, different windows for project times where they can impact the roadway to make it safer for them to kind of get in and get out and stay out. And so congratulations on that safety summit. It's a big summit between Caltrans leadership, Caltrans staff, the contracting industry, and it's just, it expanded from the previous year. And I appreciate the passion that Tokes has on trying to move that number, move the needle on the safety thing, and we're working together on different things like changeable message signs. And just his statement to me is we can't do the same thing, Vince. We got to be outside the box. We got to be out there, and we're going to work with him to see if we can do everything we can to help him there. In fact, I think the governor just recently signed the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, a new Strategic Highway Safety Plan, which is another example of coordination for safety in California. California Highway Patrol, DMV, emergency services. There are so many players, local agencies, state agencies, different state agencies, different local agencies that are players in the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. It's unlike any other one in the country. The coordination of that is unlike anything else in the country. So Caltrans should be applauded for their leadership in that. The Caltrans Office of Traffic Safety, there's just so many different agencies that are a part of that. So thank you for that. ER time extensions, a year or so ago, we were complaining that Federal Highway was pretty strict on ER time extensions, and we denied several of them. I've been working with our Federal Highway leadership, and we've been able to exercise a little bit more flexibilities with those. So we've recently received a boatload of ER time extensions, and we only had to deny a few of those, which I felt was very reasonable. So we're able to exercise a little bit more flexibility and reasonableness, I think. But I think I'm reasonable. Back off.
You also think you're good looking.
I do. I wake up every morning and say that. I see the reflection in my head and go, hey, that looks good. We did a 326 monitoring, so that's our NEPA assignment for categorical exclusions. We did a monitoring review for that and found no substantial issues. So that program is working very well, it looks like. And we're going to do the 320. So 326 is categorical exclusions. 327 is the entire program. There's reasons why we have both here in California. And we're going to be doing a monitoring review on the 327 program this year. So I'm looking forward to seeing no substantial issues with that either. So that's all I have. Is there any questions for me?
Questions for Mitch?
Another very thorough report.
Here's
I
an
do what I can.
idea for you with the EPA. We have a program, sometimes we submit an application and the agency entity would have 30 days to get back to us, and if we don't hear anything, it's all good. So how about if we do that with y'all? We sent it to you 30 days ago and we don't hear from you, we'll know we're good to go.
And I appreciate no questions. So thank you for that. You better be careful because we might say that to you all.
Hey.
And I don't think you want that either.
We might, we're good. Okay, thanks, Vince, seriously. Okay, regional agencies, Philip.
You know, it's always hard to come up here following comedian Vince, right? Good afternoon and Happy New Year. I guess we could still say Happy New Year, right? Because it's still in January. So Philip Chu here with San Bernardino County Transportation Authority, reporting on behalf of the RTPA group. First off, congratulations to Susan on her retirement. We appreciate all that you have done working with the RTPA groups and all the individual RTPA throughout the state. We wish you all the best on your retirement, and also congratulations to Mitch on his new appointment as Executive Director. So we look forward to working with you in the future. So the group met this morning and received an update on the safe vehicle rules from FHWA and CalCog. The group is concerned that the safe vehicle rules would impact project delivery since no conformity determination will be made for new projects or projects with scope changes. And it might take up to 2 years to reach a resolution on the safe vehicle rules. So the RTPA group is kind of recommending the CTC might consider exceptions on timely use of funds policy for allocations when projects are impacted by the safe vehicle rules. The group has also nominated Kenny Cow from MTC to represent the RTPA group on the Short Line Railroad Program per SB 87, and we look forward to working with the CTC on developing the program guidelines. The RTPA also received an overview of the 2020 SHOP program and appreciates the additional time for comments on the draft program. We heard updates from the CTC staff on various SB1 program guidelines. I would like to thank the CTC staff on their effort in putting together the SB1 guidelines workshop in the past several months. The group supports the SCCP guidelines, which is up for adoption today. We look forward to working with the CTC staff on updating the TCEP target shares at the next cycle. That pretty much concludes my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Okay, Philip, I think we're good. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to move to the rural counties.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chair Inman, Woodrow Deloria with the El Dorado County Transportation Commission representing the Rural Counties Task Force. The Rural Counties Task Force met on January 17th and discussed a number of issues and opportunities facing the 26 rural counties. The RCTF has been very much engaged in the development of the SB1 guidelines, and we really appreciate all the work that the staff's done. Specifically, I'd like to thank Christine Gordon, Teresa Favia, Lori Waters, Alicia Segura-Smith, and Dawn Chesser. Your staff were able to reach consensus across urban, suburban, and rural counties, which I assure you is no easy task. During the January meeting, we did receive an update on the draft California Freight Mobility Plan, and the RCTF member agencies are now reviewing that and will be providing comments on the freight plan. I'd also like to thank Director Omashakin for taking time to meet with a couple of Rural Counties Task Force members on January 7th, and we look forward to having you at a future meeting to meet the rest of the 26 rural counties. Finally, on behalf of all the current and past RCTF members, we'd like to thank Director Branson for your partnership and support over the years. Working with you and your staff under your leadership has been an honor. We understand that you are retiring within a rural county, and all the rural counties do welcome you with open arms. So we look forward to hearing how you are going to be writing this next chapter. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Congratulations, and also congratulations, Mitch.
Okay, thank you, Woodrow. Okay, next we're going to go to Self-Help Counties. Keith?
Thank you. I'd like to start off by also congratulating Susan and thanking her for her service and putting up with me through the years. It's been always a challenge for both of us, I think, to meet the needs and balance the needs of the state and the locals. From the Self-Help Counties perspective, we try our best to make sure that we're implementing the will of our voting public, and you've been a good partner for us moving forward to make sure that we do that. Mitch, congratulations. I look forward to working with you and having many successful years in the future. With that, from the Self-Help Counties perspective, we're going to be meeting with the department next week, looking at some of the policies, specifically 743, to again make sure that as we look at different policies from a statewide perspective, that when we get into the project delivery phase of the regional and local levels, that the policies that we are trying to implement are also lining up with the projects that we've been mandated to build. So we're looking forward to that communication. We're looking forward to continuing that communication and building upon the relationship to make sure that, again, as we like to say at the Self-Help Counties, that a promise made is a promise kept, and we're delivering the projects while also meeting some of the new and policies that are coming down from the state. So that will take place next week. And as the legislature starts up in conjunction with the chairman of the Transportation Committee in both houses, but Assemblyman Frazier, who's always been a champion for us and transportation in general, looking at continuing a policy that put some restrictions on the indirect cost rate that are charged to self-help counties. It's been our perspective that that indirect cost rate should be limited in that it's just government paying government to deliver projects. And we've had some success in the past. It's coming up. It had a cap on the timeline, and it's up for renewal in another 1.5 years, but we're going to be starting those discussions again. We maintain discussions with Congress on a number of issues. Of most import lately has been the aviation fuel tax diversion. We have submitted letters to multiple Congresses when being led by either party and have various degrees of sympathy on whether or not the FAA is going to continue to listen to us and maybe have some success in reverting back to what the old rule used to be, which is that there wasn't a special diversion requirement for airports. So that discussion continues. I'd like to congratulate PVK on his new chairmanship, and we look forward to having you around for a very long time and continuing the partnership as well. So with that, I'm open for any questions and just very much looking forward to a very successful cooperative 2020.
Okay, any questions? Okay, we now have a new acronym, PVK. There you go. Okay. I'm Fly, if you ever want to call me Keith.
Thank you.
Okay, innovations, Garth?
Commissioners, tab 15 is an informational item, and as Henry Lee mentioned earlier, on-demand shuttles, also known as microtransit, is a viable way to increase transit utilization. Megan Richer from the Director of Strategic Partnerships at VIA will describe how on-demand shuttles are having a positive impact on transit ridership in California and elsewhere. With that, Megan.
Hi, good afternoon. Chair and Commissioners, I'm Megan Richer, Director of Strategic Partnerships at VIA. Thank you so much for having me here to speak today. It's an honor to be here. You well know that we face major challenges in transportation today. We can start with congestion and overloaded infrastructure. Transportation is now the #1 cause of greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S., and not to mention all the issues around economic and social mobility. So the people who are hurt the most are low income, people with disabilities, the elderly. And so to sort of transition from that sort of negative challenges, I wanted to talk more today about how innovation and technology can make transit services better. Specifically, I'm here to talk about how on-demand dynamic shuttle networks can make transit more efficient, affordable, equitable, and accessible. This is where VIA comes in. By offering on-demand shuttle networks with real-time dynamic routing that is affordable, equitable, and convenient, we are transforming elements of the transit system. We take riders from any corner of a zone to any other street corner of the zone, which means that in this system, every single person lives within a block of a bus stop, and any destination is within a block of a bus stop. More than that, it's accessible. So our services include wheelchair-accessible vehicles, solutions for the unbanked, solutions for non-smartphone users. Lastly, we share extensive data with the cities and agencies that we work with. To give you a better picture of what that looks like, today VIA is partnering with nearly 100 partners globally. I'm going to focus more on what we're doing in California, but needless to say, these partners globally are cities, transit agencies, universities, employers, private bus operators, and we cover cities small, medium, and large, suburban, and rural with our solutions. We've served over 70 million riders to date, and I'm most excited personally about what we're doing in California. So starting here, where we are today, we've partnered with the city of West Sacramento, and we also just launched a service with SAC-RT in January. I'll talk a little bit more about those coming up, but just moving further south, in the Bay Area, we work with Marin Transit, Samtrans, and the city of Cupertino. Moving further down south, we have a partnership with LA Metro and with the OCTA in Orange County. And lastly, we have an autonomous vehicle deployment in the city of Irvine. All this to say is that when we work with partners, we focus on meeting their goals, and those goals are most often increasing transit ridership, reducing congestion, reducing emissions, and improving the quality of life for users. So to start with a launch that we're very excited about, it's extremely progressive work that SAC-RT is doing here in your hometown. So SmartRide just launched in January 2020 and became the largest microtransit deployment in America. So they cover over 100 square miles, over 9 zones, and they're using 42 vehicles, 6 of which are zero-emission vehicles. In this partnership, SAC-RT provides the vehicles, the drivers, and the operators, and VIA provides the software and shares extensive data. As you can see, that's what the app looks like. It's a white-labeled branded app, and I wanted to let you know that SAC-RT has made sure that today they will have micromobility zero-emission vehicles available for all of you to take from this meeting to the reception. So you get to, I guess, try it out firsthand. Moving on, I wanted to highlight what we're doing with LA Metro. So LA Metro is a leading transit agency with respect to progressive innovations. And they won an extremely competitive FTA Mobility on Demand Sandbox grant, which enabled them to launch a service that provides a first last mile solution to low-income, high-minority communities in the LA Metro area. And we launched with them about a year ago in January 2019. 100% of riders connect to and from transit. And I'm proud to say that just a few days ago, the LA Metro Board approved an extension and an expansion of this service. I think the remarkable thing here is that we really seek to serve all populations through our service, and so not only does this have wheelchair accessible vehicles, options for low-income riders, the unbanked, the underbanked, and non-smartphone users, it also has services for limited English proficiency riders as well. For the last, specific example, I wanted to highlight West Sacramento, also very close to home, or perhaps home for some of you guys. The mayor of West Sacramento was one of the first public officials in America to bring on-demand to public transit, and he's seen real results. So as this slide highlights, in a rider survey that was done, I believe, 6 months in, 66% of respondents said that they felt safer once a service was introduced. 59% of riders said that they've experienced a greater sense of independence. Many of those riders are seniors. And the service is also reducing VMT. So 50% of users said that prior to the service, they were using Uber or Lyft in private rides, and 34% said that they were using VIA instead of driving alone. Overall, this led to a reduction in 60 tons of greenhouse gas emissions in the first year in West Sacramento. I think there's many memorable anecdotes that come from this service related to the senior citizens whose quality of life has really improved. But one of our favorite quotes at VIA that has come out of this is from an elderly Sacramento resident named Gail, and she said, "I think they're the best thing since bacon. Other car transport services are too expensive for a senior." That's my only laugh in the presentation, but tried. Just to quickly go through the other work that we're doing across California, we've really worked with a number of progressive, innovative, visionary transit agencies. Cupertino has previously said that they have the highest drive-alone rate in the country, not a statistic that they're proud of, but what they are proud of is that they've introduced a solution. They launched a microtransit service in October, and it connects residents throughout the city of Cupertino and to the Caltrain stations nearby. In Orange County, the OCTA has introduced OC Flex, which is a first and last mile solution for a car-dependent suburban area. 1/3 of riders connect to transit. In Marin Transit largely serves paratransit riders as well as commuters who use it as a first last mile solution with their Marin Transit Connect. With Samtrans, we partnered with them to replace an underperforming deviated bus route, seeking to provide their Pacifica residents a flexible and affordable transportation option. And lastly, in Irvine, California, it's the world's first shared on-demand autonomous vehicle deployment on public roads, and VIA partner with Hyundai, Pony AI, to create this deployment. And just to highlight more broadly how microtransit complements transit operators with diverse use cases, this varies from everything to using electric vehicles. We're completely vehicle agnostic. Of course, we would love to do more and more deployments with electric vehicles. I mentioned that the SAC-RT deployment uses 6 zero-emission vehicles. In Berlin, Germany, in our partnership with the BVG, that's the largest on-demand public transit deployment globally, and there over 160 vehicles in the fleet are electric, and that's growing to 300. We also cover transit deserts, as is shown here with CODA in Grove City, Ohio. It's a way to introduce new transit coverage in a low-density area. With Grand Rapids, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, we've partnered with the Rapid to improve the quality of service of paratransit. So instead of having a 48-hour wait period and having a very poor customer experience, now they can essentially have paratransit on demand. It's lowering costs and drastically improving the rider experience. In Arlington, Texas, that's the first city in the U.S. to have its public transportation be solely microtransit. We've delivered hundreds of thousands of rides there with a 97% approval rating. And most recently, New York City Department of Education, the largest school district in the U.S., awarded VIA with a contract to put its technology into the city's nearly 10,000 school buses to dramatically improve the safety, transparency, and operational efficiency of their school buses. West Sacramento is also partnering with VIA on school buses. So I just wanted to give you a sense of the variety here. We have a very flexible technological solution, and broadly speaking, microtransit is really working to serve goals around improving accessibility, affordability, lowering emissions, and congestion. Thank you so much for your attention today. I'd be happy to answer any questions now or anytime that's convenient for you.
Okay. Commissioner Norton, and then I'll go to Commissioner Kehoe.
I liked your point about how microtransit is operating in conjunction with transit. And I just wanted to ask if you're keeping data, especially at Metro, because the VIA program is only working with people who take transit. How many people wouldn't have taken transit at all if not for your ability to have them take transit and then complete the last mile with a VIA trip?
Absolutely. So to answer your question, we have extensive data on all of our deployments, and we make it a real priority and make sure that we share that with the agencies and the cities that we work with. In the case of LA Metro, I believe that what they've seen is around a 10% increase in transit usage based on the service. I can get back to you with the exact statistic, but I believe it's about 10%. And that's part of the reason they're serving communities that traditionally lacked access to transit, and part of the reason that they're extending and expanding the project is because it's increasing transit ridership.
Thank you. I'd be very interested in those follow-up statistics, so thank you very much. Congratulations.
Okay. Commissioner Kehoe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very good presentation, interesting. Have you been able to open any conversations with any of the San Diego agencies, Metropolitan Transit System, or Sandag, city or county, anything like that?
We have had some initial conversations with Sandag, who have been extremely receptive to microtransit and to using microtransit in their, I believe they're undergoing a sort of 50-year planning process, and so we've had a number of conversations as it relates to their long-term planning. As far as MTS goes, we've had a couple initial conversations with them. I'm actually supposed to speak with someone from MTS next week, so it's quite timely, but what I can share with you is that I know that their ballot measure, where they're proposing local funding for transit there, does reflect in the sort of draft expenditure, I believe $5 million a year for microtransit going forward. So all that to say that they seem to be supportive of this at the outset, which we're very excited about.
Good, good. Well, I'd love to know more how that conversation goes when you have it next week, and I can touch base with the MTS folks as well, and Sandag actually attends this meeting, so they'll know what's going on too. Thank you.
Okay, yes, Chairman Frazier.
So when you talk about the paratransit component of service in the first and last mile, are you working with the regional centers in California for the IDD population where they are absolutely desperate for help and transportation? This is all we hear when we talk to this community of, the autistic and cerebral palsy. I know we have a wheelchair access, but do we have training for the IDD population to be able to utilize this microtransit component?
So those are not conversations that I'm aware of that we've had to date, but they're certainly conversations that we would like to have. As I mentioned, the example in Grand Rapids, Michigan, we've overtaken or upgrading legacy paratransit there. We also have a very large project in Hampton Roads, Virginia, which will be taking over their legacy paratransit. And as I mentioned, all of our services with agencies include options for mobility impaired individuals. And so we haven't, to my knowledge, had those conversations to date, but we have a very robust paratransit solution and are very interested in essentially serving this space. So I'd be open to any sort of conversations along those lines.
Yeah, and I think that, there's 21 regional centers throughout California servicing 350,000 individuals in the IDD population. And I think it's kind of a crime that we're not, we acknowledge the ADA, but we don't acknowledge the people with intellectual developmentally disabled. And those are the components when we're talking about getting daycare centers or even integrated workforce development. They don't have transportation. So, there is an opportunity for this component to be actually their savior.
Couldn't agree more. And we're very interested to just continue that discussion.
Yes, Commissioner Dunn.
Thank you very much for this. I'm really very intrigued for a number of things working on trying to get people to think about these kind of options in their community and not be afraid to explore and read a schedule and stuff. Can you share a little bit about how are you marketing this to the public, and generally, how do the budgets run just for marketing to get the word out that this exists and to get them to not be afraid to get on something they haven't seen before?
So there's a few different avenues. I would say we have an extensive partnerships team, which is essentially a sales team, but they present quite a bit at conferences and make direct relationships with people at transit agencies and cities globally.
So it'd be the public agencies that would do the marketing for the riders?
Okay, sorry.
I'm trying to get, how do you get the public to know this is here?
Okay, so
Yeah.
that would be, when we think about it, is how do we sort of stimulate demand
Right,
or
right.
grow ridership? And every single service, we do a very, very intensive sort of marketing and ridership and growth sort of plan for all the phases of the service. And I would say that's something that we work in partnership with the city. Often, these are white labeled solutions, as is the case with something like SmartRide, and in that case, the agency will often take the lead, but because VIA has a lot of experience in growing ridership for specifically on-demand transit, we have a lot of techniques, and that can venture anywhere from things like street marketing. So if we're serving a first last mile solution to a transit hub, we'll have people on the ground who are educating people and helping people to essentially take their first ride. We have a lot of our ridership comes from word of mouth. So within the app, it's very easy to essentially share with a friend and give them, free rides through promo codes. And we found that that is like probably the best way to grow ridership as a service expands. Is through word of mouth, and we're able to do that through a lot of tools within the app. But essentially, VIA creates a marketing and a growth plan in combination with the transit agencies or the city's existing channels to make sure that we're reaching people locally. And often before a service launches, there's quite a bit of community outreach to make sure that different community centers and stakeholders are aware and knowledgeable about the service launching.
So do you help fund it, or does the agency fund the marketing of this?
It's typically funded through the agency or the city.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
But just one piece of that is when I was initially, a lot of these projects come through a competitive RFP process as well.
All righty, well, one thing I wanted to ask you is, the commission has, part of our responsibility is to advise the legislature on when we need to tweak something or a law or have a new one. So we'd be very interested to know what barriers there might be, if there's some old rule somewhere that prohibits we could do this except for. So if y'all can just have your partners make sure that they lean in and let us know, because this is a new option on the menu, and, you know, maybe it isn't exactly right, but it could be if we could just round that corner. So let us know if there's things. Yes, Director Omashakin.
Yes, just a couple of very, very quick questions. Very good job on the presentation, by the way. So do you have any efforts underway, or are you thinking about targeting underserved communities with this, communities of, for example, low-income communities, to see how they can take advantage of something like this? And your business model, is this a for-profit venture? And are the people that work for VIA, are they employees or these non-employees? I just didn't get that part as far as your business model.
Sure. So to answer your first question, we absolutely work to serve low-income communities. I focused on California in this presentation, but I think LA Metro is a good example of this, as is King County Metro in Seattle. Those are projects that specifically are targeting low-income, high-minority communities to provide a first last mile solution where they traditionally lacked access to transit. And all of our solutions include an option for the unbanked, and we can work with a transit agency's fare structure, as they often have fares for low-income riders, for instance. You know, and that also goes to our efforts to have a solution for non-smartphone users, since it's it's often an overlapping population, and that's a call-in option where they can essentially book a ride over the phone. And then the second question about our model. So we are essentially, we can provide our services in two ways. One is that we're essentially licensing our software, so it's software as a service. So in the example of SAC-RT, they have the vehicles, they use unionized drivers, and they are the operators of the service. VIA essentially provides the software and does robust data sharing and provides sort of the back-end tools to run the service, but we are really the technology provider in this service. In a different model, West Sacramento does what we call transportation as a service, or essentially a turnkey solution, where we, as VIA, run the entire operation. That means that we work with a vehicle provider to provide the vehicles, and we are the ones who register and essentially recruit the driver partners and manage that side of things. And then we also are the operators, and we work hand in hand with the city to do service design, to share data. We check in frequently, but we are essentially the operators and the software providers as well. And it's really a mix. It just depends on what the city or agency needs and what their goals are. But our model is completely flexible, and so we can work with unionized employees if that's what the city or agency wants. Obviously, that's usually increased cost for operating, but our model is completely flexible.
Good to know. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, well, good, fascinating. Keep up the good work.
very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Item 16, Paul.
Commissioners, item 16 is an action item to accept the staff report on legislation being monitored. The legislature reconvened on January 6th to start the second year of its two-year legislative session. Members have until February 21st to introduce new bills. To date, there have not been very many new transportation bills introduced, but we expect many more to be introduced closer to the bill deadline. Commission staff held a briefing for legislative staff on January 15th on the Commission's annual report, including the Commission's legislative recommendations. And Commission staff expect several of these recommendations could be introduced into legislation, and will bring forward any such bills for consideration at the March meeting. Commission staff are also monitoring the governor's budget proposal, which was released on January 10th and was summarized by Undersecretary Canove in her report. And with that, staff recommends you approve this item.
So moved.
May I ask second? Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Von Kennetenberg, a second by Commissioner Burke, and a question by Commissioner Kehoe.
Just a quick question. How many Capitol staff attended your briefing?
We had maybe about 24.
Okay. Thank you for the info.
Any other discussions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? That motion carries. We'll move to item 17, Paul, budget and capacity.
Commissioners, item 17 is an informational item. The item is an update on the budget and program allocation capacity, which will be presented by Keith Duncan from Caltrans.
Thank you, Paul. Before I begin, on behalf of the Division of Budgets, we would just like to echo similar comments towards Executive Director Branson. Congratulations, and we wish you all the best and happiness in retirement. And hello, Commissioners. Good afternoon. As Paul mentioned, today I'll be providing the budget and allocation capacity update for you. Through the first half of the fiscal year, the Commission has allocated approximately $3 billion, which represents about 42% of the overall $7.1 billion capacity. Given the dynamics of project delivery, we do expect the third and fourth quarters to be quite busy as we work to allocate the remaining capacity. There we go. As previously mentioned by Undersecretary Canove, this past January 10th, Governor Newsom released his proposed budget for the upcoming 2020-2021 fiscal year. For Caltrans, the governor's proposing an increase of approximately $832 million for a total budget of $15.5 billion, as well as a decrease of 4 positions for a total of 20,755 positions. As identified in the table in front of you, we've separated the budget of the $15.5 billion into 4 primary categories. The state operations, which represents the staffing, as well as equipment, facilities, and contract funding for our various maintenance activities and our major maintenance projects. The capital outlay category, which represents the funding for major construction projects that the Commission allocates for. And the local assistance category represents the funding that is allocated to local agencies for their transportation funding needs.
Thank you.
As I understand, the Commission likes pictures, so this slide here is another depiction of that $15.5 billion. It's a representation of the proposed budget broken down by each of the core programs. There on the right, you can see the capital outlay projects and the project delivery support, which represents about 47% of the proposed budget. 21% for our local assistance, 16% for maintenance and operations, 13% for mass transit and intercity rail projects, and about 3% for planning, program development, and various other departmental programs. As part of the governor's budget, Caltrans does have a series of budget change proposals. I wanted to share a few of the highlights. The first is related to Prop 1B funding. We are proposing to reduce staffing by 12 positions over the next 2 years, which is consistent with workload reduction in the program. We are requesting funding for a transportation system network replacement, which is an IT project. As previously discussed, we are also requesting funding for litter abatement, which is to address the increasing trash collection needs across our transportation system. Let's see. The next is related to pedestrian and bicyclist safety investigation program. We're requesting 2 years increase of 12 positions for resources dedicated to investigate accidents involving pedestrians and bicyclists throughout our transportation system. We're requesting funding for the aeronautics grant program to address our local airports, funding safety, maintenance, operation, and capital improvement projects. And lastly, we're requesting resources related to wildfire litigation. The department is seeing an increase in legal service needs related to wildfire litigation, so these resources are to address that. Lastly, included in the governor's budget are 2 items we did expect with the passage of SB 1, the first of 2 inflationary increases. The first related to the Transportation Improvement Fee, the TIF, took effect January 1st. And the next is related to the inflationary increase for the excise fuel tax, which takes effect July 1st. see. Upcoming events for, I'll say, budgetary information sharing. In March, we'll be working with CT staff for the adoption of the 2021 ATP fund estimate. In April, Caltrans will be releasing its 2019-2020 Chart C and Transportation Financing Package. And in May, the governor will release his May revision of his proposed 2020-21 Budget Act. And with that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Yes, Commissioner Dunn.
Just a quick question. The increase in trash costs from 22 to 43 million, does that also reflect the increase in homelessness around the state?
No, these funds that are being requested are dedicated for just picking up trash and disposing of it. It is separate from.
Whether there's homelessness or not, so that there could be even additional costs for cleanup of encampments after folks are housed, et cetera.
That could be true, yes.
And that would be a different budget item?
Yes.
Got it, thanks.
Director Amnishtakin, do you have your light on because you wish to speak? No, I don't want to miss you. So. Okay, any other questions on that? On the wildfire, it's just for legal. We don't have any other responsibilities. I know the whole wildfire task force has been stood up. I would wonder if there's any clearing that we have to do on any of our areas or anything. Is there any additional wildfire?
I'm not aware of any at this time, but this
Okay.
proposal is just for support our legal
Litigation.
division to address the legal needs.
All right. Okay.
Okay, thank you, and
Thank you very
happy
much.
Wednesday.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Paul, active transportation.
Commissioners, tab 18 is an informational presentation of the draft 2021 Active Transportation Fund estimate. Commission staff have worked with Caltrans on the development of the estimate. What is being presented right now is a draft. The final adoption will come at the March meeting. And with that, I will turn it over to Clark.
Thank you, Paul. I can't help but thank Susan for her kind words, probably exaggerated, but congratulations to you as well. We live in the same town, so perhaps some middle of the day we'll be on the bike trail together. So as Paul said, this is a presentation of the draft Active Transportation Program Fund Estimate, which lays out the capacity for the program for a 4-year period. The funding laid out really is consistent with the 2019 fund estimate, the sources being the same, state highway account resources, the SB1 road maintenance rehabilitation account resources, and federal funding essentially continuing at the same level. The Federal Transportation Act expires later this year. But for purposes of assuming resources for this fund estimate, we assume the resources will continue at the same level as in the current act. So this is just a brief review of the funding. In the first 2 years of the fund estimate, the available resources reflect the programming that had taken place in the prior program. So there's reductions for projects that have been committed in that program. The last 2 years reflect a reservation of some of the resources to be held over to the 2023 fund estimate period. The distributions are split up between urban, small urban and rural regions and a statewide competition. Those distributions are in statute by percentage, and so it's rather a pro forma in terms of how those distributions occur. There is, under the Budget Act provisions, funding that was set aside for the California Conservation Corps. That was a limited period, and the last year of that will be the first year of this fund estimate timeframe. So the next steps for this fund estimate are to come back after consulting with the commission further, any input from you as commissioners, and bringing forward the final proposal for your adoption at the next meeting in March. And with that, if there are any questions, I'd be glad to address them.
Any questions? I do have a request for a comment, so Stephen Keck.
This is troubling.
Thank you for recognizing me. I kind of always wanted to put in a speaker card, and I didn't want to abuse my familiarity with the commission by just jumping up, as I sometimes do. In this case, I want it to be quite serious because Clark's been part of the CTC commission meetings for a few years now, but he's been a part of the Caltrans family for at least 3 decades. I've worked with him very closely for more than 15 years. Not quite at the beginning, but certainly long enough to know that he is a consummate civil servant. He is, as you can tell, straightforward, honest, wise. He has been a friend to me, a mentor, more recently as I became the CFO, a very trusted advisor. I personally am very sad to see him go, just about as sad as I was when Norma left. But I'm also very happy because I know he's got a lot of retiring to do. So I wish him the very best, and I wanted to do so formally to the commission, and I thank all of you for your kind words about Clark as well. I also wanted to say, Susan, with your retirement as well, you know, we've worked together for a very, very long time. I wish you the very best. I know you'll enjoy your retirement, and everybody said such kind words. I can hardly add to them, but I wish you the very best, and thank you for all your support of me. And also wanted to recognize Keith, who didn't really get to introduce himself much. He got to fill in for Clark. Wanted to say he was much better in his first presentation to the commission than I was. Maybe, I don't know, 13 or 14 years ago when I first started to do these. So those are all my comments, and I appreciate you allowing me to take up your time. Thank you.
Okay, well, Stephen, while you're there, I wasn't going to say this, but y'all, you know how we love the visuals, that Stephen really spoiled us by giving us images so we could really grasp those. But I figured it all out. I found Stephen Keck at the ATM machine outside our transportation building. So now I know where those images all come from, Stephen.
Yes.
We just hit the withdrawal button and there we go.
It just
We
gives you
have
money. It's
all
really nice.
The transportation dollars. No,
Yep,
seriously.
absolutely. I wish it was big enough for that. That would be nice.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on now to item 19, transportation funding projections. Hannah.
Commissioners, item tab 19 is an informational item. Professor Asha Weinstein Agrawal, Director of the National Transportation Finance Center at San Jose State University Mineta Transportation Institute, will provide an overview of a report that looks at revenue projections over the next 20 years. It takes into account the impact of zero emissions vehicles on future transportation revenue. Staff's intent in providing this information is to help inform future conversations about revenue strategies. Asha?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much to the Commission for your interest in this work. Before I launch into it, Susan, you're not off the hook yet more congratulations on your retirement from me, but also on behalf of the Mineta Transportation Institute and Secretary Mineta himself. So I've been told to be really quick, so I'm going to try and be very unprofessor-like and whiz through especially the methods so that we can get to the interesting stuff. So this was a project that was actually directly inspired by Chair Inman when I presented some other projections about a year ago, and she said, yes, but what if they're, electric vehicles? How are these estimates going to vary if we have much faster penetration of electric vehicles than you're counting on in this particular set? And I thought, what a good question. And went back, and I'm executive director of the Institute. Karen Philbick agreed this was an important add-on project. So thank you for inspiring us, and I hope that this material will help answer the questions you raised. So our question is, and I should acknowledge my co-authors, Dr. Martin Wax and Hannah King. So our question is, how will growing numbers of light-duty zero-emission vehicles impact state transportation revenues through 2040? And so our methods, these are fairly simple projections, spreadsheet models. We use just sort of off-the-shelf, widely accessible data from places like the U.S. International Energy Agency. And we basically drew in all these assumptions about things like the number of people there will be in the state and how many miles they'll be driven and what gas prices will be and all these good things. And I should say, one thing I want to emphasize, the taxes and fees that we are projecting are a very particular set that meet 3 criteria. One, they're collected from light-duty vehicle owners and users, so we're not looking at trucking. Secondly, the amount of revenue that people pay has to be at least indirectly related to the vehicle's fuel source, where a shift to lots more EVs would matter. And then finally, the proceeds have to be dedicated to the state's transportation programs. So there's lots of things that we're not looking at, like locally generated revenues or federal pass-throughs of gas tax. These are the things California as a state entity raises and spends on transportation. So, and I won't go over it in any detail, but so we're looking at gasoline taxes, diesel taxes, basically the SB1 package, and then also these 2 new vehicle fees that were introduced through the legislation. So there's the transportation improvement fee, which is an annual fee that is directly based on your vehicle's value, and then the brand new road improvement fee of $100 per zero-emission vehicle. So those are the set that we're looking at. And we compared essentially 2 scenarios, one where we continue our, let's face it, rather slow rate of adoption of electric vehicles, roughly 26,000 vehicles per year. And then our high adoption scenario, we took the state's goal of 5 million ZEBs by 2030. So those are the 2 scenarios we were comparing. What did we learn? So this in some ways is the key takeaway, and then I'll unpack a little bit what it means. So projecting out through 2040, under these 2 scenarios, high rates of adoption, low rates of adoption, the bands, as this would what the state would be raising from all those different taxes and fees that I just had up for a moment. And I think the results are actually counterintuitive, at least to some, because the purple, which is on the top, is actually the likely revenue if we have fast adoption of zero-emission vehicles. So we actually will end up probably with a bit more revenue if we have lots and lots of people running out and buying EVs and such. So that's one thing to notice, because I think there's been a lot of concern nationally as well as in California, like the gas tax, electric vehicles, are we just going to completely run out of money if we keep, relying on the gas tax? Second thing, though, to notice is that we didn't just give a line, because I'm a big believer that the future is too hard to predict with certainty, and a line is never very useful. We have sort of a range of probabilities. You'll also notice there's a big overlap. So that's another thing to notice. Final point I'll make on this slide is that sort of if we look at the average of the 2 projections, it's like about $11 billion with the high ZEV adoption and $9 billion for the low ZEV adoption. So I'm actually going to skip this, but I report if anyone is interested in sort of how the relative importance of these different taxes will be towards our total revenues collected for each year. That's in here. This is one of the things that I wanted to, and I want to talk now about those 2 fees, the TIF and the RIF, because that's really, I think, the crux of why our projections are not necessarily what everyone would have anticipated. So the transportation improvement fee is based on the value of your vehicle. At least for now, electric vehicles are more expensive than comparative internal combustion engine vehicles. So if you have an electric vehicle, you are going to be paying more probably, in your TIF than if you bought a comparable internal combustion engine vehicles. So having more zero-emission vehicles in this case means a more expensive vehicle fleet, and people are paying slightly more taxes. The other thing, and this I don't think will be a big surprise, at least hopefully not if you think about it, so the RIF, the road improvement fee, which is only for zero-emission vehicle owners, $100 per year. If you have lots of zero-emission vehicles, you raise a whole lot more money than if you don't have many EVs. And in fact, we don't have a yellow bar on this because it was like such a tiny little line, you couldn't even really see it. So basically, if we have low adoption rates of EVs and such, we will collect almost no road improvement fee revenue. I exaggerate slightly, but more or less change. If we have the growth in electric vehicles and other zero-emission vehicles that the state is hoping for, we will actually raise quite a bit of revenue by 2040 just with the existing tax structure. So with that, I would just like to say kind of key findings. Revenue is likely to be in the 9 to 11, 12 billion range. We're actually likely, given our current package of state transportation taxes, to be collecting more under the high adoption scenario. And then one sort of caveat I will throw out, which is that if electric vehicles and others get a lot cheaper fast, which would be good in many ways, it will mean that the revenues would probably be a bit lower than we've projected, since again, a key piece of this is the vehicle value that relates to the TIF amount people pay. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Sure, Commissioner Kehoe.
There we go. Thank you very much. It's quite a range. So as a, scholar in this area, what do you think the real average is going to be? And it doesn't seem, I ran the Electric Vehicle Collaborative in California for 5 years, and I drive an EV, but I notice, and they are expanding, but we're not seeing the famous hockey puck line that we were hoping for 5 years ago or so. So what's your thought? Hockey stick.
I will humbly say that my expertise is not understanding likely rates of EV adoption. So you probably know a great deal more than I do, quite honestly, on that. But we were, for this project, we were trying to just look at what happens if we get a whole lot of
You
them.
pick a high number, a low number, and sort of.
Yeah. And so where the real numbers will be, again, I think there are a lot of people in the room who probably could give better guesses than me. So.
Maybe. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Norton.
I just had two questions. One, how did you plot the hybrids that are plug-in plus gas? And then the other is, there's been a study by UCLA that also Marty Wax did that said that one of the main reasons people were buying zero-emission vehicles was being able to drive in carpool lanes and on express lanes. How do you think pricing strategies such as road charges or congestion pricing that may have different pricing for ZEVs, how do you see that as bumping up demand and use of ZEVs?
My answer probably takes a lot longer than the commission wants to hear, so perhaps at other time I could answer more fully. But I think we are sending very strong price signals to the public in terms of annual fees, if we introduce a mileage fee, et cetera, and that will influence adoption rates. So, and then I'm sorry, your first question again was?
It was about the plug-ins, because there's a question about.
Yes. So we basically sort of looked at the existing vehicle fleet and then estimate for every year how many vehicles are there going to be, what will be the average fuel efficiency of different vehicles. So we looked at all those different vehicle types. So, yeah.
Hey, well, thank you for your work. I do appreciate it. So
thank you.
Anything we can learn from, we love. So, okay, it is now 3:16. We are going to take a 10-minute bio break. So be back at 3:26.